Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wizarding Wars number 2, another Harry Potter trading card game tournament. Any Final Fantasy people looking for VODs on this channel might be a little bit confused, but that's right. I also dabble a little bit in a dead card game from 2001 made by Wizards of the Coast. So let's just jump right into this week's tournament. We have got two titans of the game here, two of the big revival top dogs themselves, Stefan Giovanni and Sammy DeSalvo playing round 1. We're going to go ahead and jump right into that game, catch some of the action. What happened to my beautiful music? Alright. Looks like these guys have already started, so let's see if we can figure out what happened the first few turns here as we jump into this game. So we have got... Wait a second, this isn't Final Fantasy? That's right, it's not. This is a Harry Potter trading card game. We've got Gilderoy Lockhart versus Hooch here. So Gilderoy Lockhart is one of the new revival set Heir of Slytherin characters, so of course I'm not surprised at all to see that that's what Stefan has brought out to play this week. And he is playing, of course, multiple colors because that's what Gilderoy wants, to take advantage of all these discard effects and really just be aggressive. So he's dipping into multiple colors to get access to as many of those discard effects as he can. Creatures is an interesting one here, too, playing one of the best low-curve creatures in the game, Sandstone Gargoyle, which, of course, I know that some of these are hard to read because they show up sideways on untap. Sorry, guys. Sandstone Gargoyle is going to go ahead and... do 1 damage every turn, but if your opponent doesn't have any creatures, it bumps it up to 3, so you get a 3/2 for 3. It's really powerful in the Harry Potter trading card game. And it looks like the deck that Sammy is playing is a Charms and Hooch Quidditch deck. Hooch lets you just go ahead and search for a broom early on, and Comet 260 is the broom of choice for Sammy here. Comet 260 is going to, of course, let you prevent 1 damage done to you every turn. So it's just kind of the long game, trying to survive a little bit there. Oh, looks like I got Sammy's name cut off on the screen. Let's see if we can fix that. Yeah, Xavier, I expect a lot of confused Final Fantasy people. There we go, that's a little bit better. We fixed that a little. Okay, Stefan's going to go ahead and play Garden Gnome. Garden Gnome, both of these guys having a similar idea here of just playing these utility cards that give you a lot of value over time. So Sammy playing Comet 260, trying to prevent 1 damage every turn. Certainly going to be effective from these gargoyles. And the Garden Gnome here is going to have a discard trigger at the end of each of your opponent's turns. Those of you familiar with Final Fantasy are going to be thinking of Scale Toad when you look at Garden Gnome. So Garden Gnome is at the end of each of your opponent's turns. If there are any cards in their hand, they choose 1 and discard it. A 1 health creature, so it's easy to remove, but in general, most people just don't play creature removal. Had no idea there was a Harry Potter trading card game. Yeah, man, the Harry Potter trading card game was made by Wizards of the Coast. Came out right after Pokemon in the early 2000s. Actually, before the movies even hit it big. So you'll see a lot of the art, like these Dracos, so these predate the movie art. It's a really neat game. It's actually very good. There's a little revival scene for it, and it's a game that I really enjoy. So we're kind of linking up with the revival scene and taking some of what we do for Final Fantasy and helping this dead game have some events, you know, because they just don't exist for this game. And it looks like Ouch is coming down from Sammy here, so that's a Quidditch spell that deals 5 damage to your opponent. If your opponent has any cards in their hand, they choose 1 and discard it. Kind of similar to something we might see Stefan play, since he has got 2 Quidditch lessons and 2 Care Magical Creatures himself. Once he gets to that next lesson, Ouch will have his opponent discard a card, and then remember, every time that he has his opponent discard Gilderoy at the end of each turn will trigger that additional discard. So the cool thing here is that Gilderoy is going to be triggering those effects for Garden Gnome at the end of Sammy's turn, and here comes Seamus Finnegan. Seamus Finnegan is one of the best characters in the Harry Potter trading card game, because in the Harry Potter trading card game you get 2 actions every turn, but Seamus's unique ability is that once during each of your turns you may discard 2 cards from your hand to get 1 more action. And the cool thing about that with Gilderoy Lockhart is that Lockheart basically says if you've discarded a card from your hand for any reason, at the end of each player's turn, you choose an opponent and they discard a card. So he's discarding to gain an action for Seamus, and that's going to trigger Gilderoy and get that extra discard out of his hand. And I was wrong earlier. Garden Gnome doesn't trigger Gilderoy, but it's just kind of like an extra additional Gilderoy effect that happens on your opponent's turn. And then the Shooting Star Broom. Look at these guys both slamming Quidditch cards and brooms down on the table. Shooting Star is a broom we don't see too often. This is going to be one that lets you draw 2 cards when you use the action to discard a card from your hand, which of course is going to be what we're doing to get that extra discard off Gilderoy Lockhart. So every time that we trigger a discard, Gilderoy will give us that bonus discard, kind of making it more efficient, worth playing. I still have some decks for this. This is all in browser. Yeah, this is up on Untap, untap.in. You can do it all in browser. And it even has the new fan set, the fan-made set, which has cards like Gilderoy Lockhart here, added in, which is the Heir of Slytherin, a revival-made set. You can go to harrypottertcg.com and you can check out all the information about the revival. It's going to be awesome. And if you're interested in some competitive information, you can head on over to darkmarktcg.com. We've got a couple of deck techs for classic Harry Potter, which is, before we added in any of these, the new cards. And we're going to have new content up there soon. You'll be able to catch VODs from these events, stuff like that. But if you're interested at all, I highly recommend joining the revival. Just check out the website, join the Discord. It's a fun old game. Potions deck set. Yes, Venomous Tentacular Juice specifically is a very, very powerful card. And it looks like Errol coming down. This is a pet card for Stefan. He loves this card. Errol is when you play it, you get to reveal the top card of your deck. And if it's a lesson, you get to put it right into play. If not, you just put it right back on top of your deck. But he's another creature, so he's dealing that 1 damage every turn. And of course, that's our win con here, is we're trying to just deal straight damage to Sammy's face and just get him all the way down to 0 while stripping his hand, of cards with all of our discard effects on things like we just used the Shooting Star Broom here, I believe. And we're going to get this card out of his hands. Oh, never mind. Bludger in the Stance is what Sammy used. Stefan chose to discard the broom. Sorry. And it looks like we're doing the old, draw a card, discarding to gain actions to draw cards, just digging, looking for some more stuff to do. It's a little bit hard for me to tell that this is on top of his lessons. Looks like we're just using actions to draw a card, which means we don't have a lot going on. But treading water is going to work out a lot better for Stefan here. And no, of course, his own ouch. Gotta love the art of this card. The Quidditch player just getting hit by the bludger. Ouch is going to just do 5 damage to the opponent and get that discard. And because of Gilderoy, that would have been deal 5, discard 2, which is neat. But of course, Sammy didn't have any cards in his hand, so it's just a damage race at this point. With 10 cards left in his deck, that's equivalent to 10 health as well. And because there are no creatures on the table, Stefan's going to be getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of these gargoyles, 7 from Errol. Yeah, this is Sammy on a 2-turn clock here. Wand Shop putting him at really, really, really high lesson count. I wonder what his top end payoff card is in this deck here. Since Wand Shop makes it so that each of his charms lessons actually provides 2 lessons, He's not at 8. He's sitting here at 17 lessons right now. Can play every card in the game. 18 lessons just to really drive it home. Oh, it's more than that. Sorry, it's 19 lessons. But nothing to play, unfortunately. And we got down to 3 cards in deck means that when Stefan goes to his next turn, that's going to be it. So I think these guys are probably going to move on to game 2. Sammy going to want to sideboard in some creature hate. Maybe has a couple direct damage spells. I wouldn't be surprised to see Rope Bind or Rose Guard or whatever the other one is. They're the same exact thing. Rose Growth and Rope Bind are the same exact card. I'm sure he's got some of those in the sideboard, some creature answers, because the 2 gargoyles are really what dismantled him there. Sure, Stefan was taking a lot of cards out of his hand. Gilderoy, definitely powerful, giving that extra oomph to all the cards that have a discard effect, really making them worth more. And when we see players not playing cards, like we talk about Peeves being just a critical utility in every deck, there should just be 2 Peeves in every single deck you build. When you don't have things like that to fall back on, people picking cards out of your hand is really going to hurt, because you're going to have to use actions just to try to get cards back in your hand. And I'm probably going to say this every single time I record videos or stream the Harry Potter trading card game, but remember, using an action on your turn to draw a card is probably one of the worst ways you can use an action. Just because it's usually indicative of you having nothing else to do. Like, thankfully, when we saw Stefan doing it there, he was doing it when he had creatures out, so he was still getting some kind of passive value over time. So he's fine stalling in that position. But it can be tough, right? I mean, because you want to do as much as you can to get closer to the win, and you only get 2 actions a turn without generating additional actions through spells and abilities. The game naturally gives you 2 actions a turn. So when you're using one of those actions to draw a card, just kind of hoping you find something to spend your next action on, it's really difficult to come back. And Sammy going first this time. We don't see... Yeah, it looks like Sammy sideboarded 7 cards in there. Oh, never mind. That might have just been the mulligan that we saw. But he definitely sideboarded some cards there. So just throwing 2 charms down, that's a pretty good turn 1. Gets him right up to 3 lessons right away. Stefan is going to play Seamus Finnegan on turn 1. And he's going to discard 2 cards to gain an action. There are 2 creatures that he's not going to be playing anytime soon. He's playing a lesson with the additional action. That's the nice thing about Seamus, is you get 2 actions a turn and character cards cost you 2 actions. But because Seamus allows you to discard to gain another action, and that doesn't cost any actions at all, you can still follow up a turn 1 Seamus with getting your lesson set up. So there's going to be a Quidditch lesson down on the field here as well. And he did trigger that additional discard because of his starting character, just for generating an action for Seamus, got an extra card out of Sammy's hand. Oh, Sammy is going to be using Fouled now. This is one of Quidditch's favorite spells. Fouled does 4 damage to the opponent, and during their next turn, they get 1 fewer action. So it usually reduces them to 1 action. There are a couple cool combos where you can force them to use 1 action on something and only give them 1 action, effectively removing their turn. But Fouled going to be a little bit less effective since Stefan does have Seamus down on the field. So we see the Broom come in, Shooting Star. Again, that is, you may use an action to discard a card from your hand to draw 2 cards. And then he's going to go ahead and... I think, actually, that we're discarding both of these cards. I think he's just showing the cards he's discarding for Seamus. Yeah. because we don't have the lessons to play either of them yet. So we're going to go discard those two. It looks like we're just using actions to draw cards, discarding them to gain another action, and then playing care of magical creatures. Unfortunately, we're going to have to keep using cards to draw, or sorry, using actions to draw cards to fuel Seamus, just because we don't have another draw engine alongside him here. With the ban of Ginny Weasley, Seamus' best friend, Seamus is really looking for a card like Colin Creevy, or again, Peeves, Photo Album, Endless Sandwiches. Cards that'll give you some nice card advantage. Combat 260 coming out for Sammy. That's going to be the one that prevents 1 damage during each opponent's turn. The nice thing about these brooms is they also provide a Quidditch lesson. So it's essentially just better than using an action to play a lesson because you get more out of it. But the caveat is, of course, that you can't play it on turn 1. No problem there. Errol the Owl coming down and is going to go ahead and reveal the top card of the deck. And it is a lesson. So Stefan hitting that Errol. Effectively getting another action advantage turn here, where he's able to play a lesson, action 1, action 2, play Errol, which slams this into play. Then he gains an action and plays the Shooting Star. So this brings him up to 5, which is nice. He can start casting his ouches, fouls of his own if he has them. He's online for all of his creatures like the Gargoyles and the Black Bat. And of course, he is going to get that extra card out of Sammy's hand. Now, Sammy, just slowly playing lessons, taking his time, not drawing any additional cards here, losing cards in his hand, but basically at the same rate Stefan is, right? Because we're using Seamus just to discard a card from our opponent's hand at this whenever we are like doing it and then just drawing a card, right? If we're not actually taking advantage of the multiple actions like we did last turn, we took advantage of having an extra action. But the 2 for 1 there isn't quite enough, because what we're actually doing is we're just blowing through our deck, right? Like we're 14 cards lower than him. It's just 14 health lower. And now this is another one of the new set cards. Cornish Pixie is going to come down here. Cornish Pixie is pretty cool. It gives you like a Thoughtseize type thing. It lets you look at your opponent's hand, choose a card, and place it underneath the Cornish Pixie. And then when Cornish Pixie leaves, they get that card back. Wow, no way. How do I download this? So you can actually just play this online. This is on untapped.in. This is all in browser. I'm just, this is like my web browser right now. And they have the Harry Potter trading card game, as well as, you know, a bunch of other trading card games right up there on the site. No download required. But if you're interested in joining the community and finding out when you can play in events or play with other players, just go ahead and go to HarryPotterTCG.com and join the revival. Alright, so it looks like Cornish Pixie stole Hawk's Head Formation. That's... Oh, this is one of those big payoff cards. We were wondering, is Sammy ramping all the way up with Wand Shop and all these Charms lessons, getting so many lessons. I think he got up to 19 last game. We were wondering where all the high-cost spells were for him to take advantage, and Hawk's Head is here. It just is a straight-up 7 for 6. What's interesting is, despite the fact that this is a Chamber of Secrets card, this is pretty weak as far as just, like, a 7-cost card. 6 damage is nothing to laugh at, but if we think about another 7-cost equivalent, like a Care of Magical Creatures card, the Welsh Green Dragon. Welsh Green Dragon enters the field, does 6 damage to the opponent, and then does 6 damage every turn after that. Of course, Welsh Green Dragon also requires you to remove some of your lessons from play, so obviously there's trade-offs for all of that stuff. Loving the art on these cards. Thanks. Yeah, so a lot of this is, they commissioned all this original art. Again, like I said, it's based on like the style of the art of the original illustrations on the books, because this was mostly before the movies or before even all the books were out when this game came out. But when you see cards like that have this really thick black border that are in high definition, like Gilderoy Lockhart or Cornish Pixies, these are cards from the fan-made set made by the Revival team. And this fan-made set just came out as the only fan-made set so far for the Harry Potter TCG. But they also sourced all of this art from either artists who wanted to contribute or art that was available online. And I think they did a great job kind of keeping it with that same classic feel and style of the uniqueness of the art of the old cards. And Fouled is going to be coming down here from Stefan. Not surprised to see it. Again, like we said, one of the most popular Quidditch spells for good reason. Deals that damage and takes an action away from them. Taking an action away from your opponent or gaining an action of your own. So powerful. So powerful. In a game where you have limited moves to make, so to speak, being able to make more moves than your opponent is a big deal. Out of Control. There's a 10 cost payoff card. This is exactly what Sammy is doing all of this ramping for. To big Quidditch cards like this. So Out of Control is another 6 damage, but then it's going to make him take 4 cards in his hand and discard them. So that's 6 damage, discard 4. And I think it's interesting that both the players here are going after each other's hands. Oh man, what a card top deck, huh? Looks like Stefan top decks Fouled off the top, and then you know, he's still whittling away with 5 damage a turn with the Gargoyle, Errol, and the Cornish Pixie over here. So he's happy to just slow down Sammy just a little bit, because every little bit he slows down Sammy just ekes him a little bit closer to the win there. Remember, he has to make up that deficit, and when Sammy's playing like 7 to 10 cost bombs that are just dealing 6 damage at a time, it's keeping him ahead of Stefan. If Stefan hadn't done all of the drawing stuff with Seamus earlier, he wouldn't have dug through his deck as much, but then he wouldn't be as set up either. So I do like what Stefan's doing is more my style. Just draw as many cards as you can and just basically build your deck so that if you draw those cards, you win. I don't like thinking of drawing more of my cards, seeing more of my deck as dealing damage to myself too much. Obviously, you do have to be a little bit aware of that stuff, but for the most part, it's usually better to see more cards and have more options and make, you know, better plays than it is to worry about that the whole game. So I like his approach. He was just digging to get value early, and he's trying to end this game, you know, before he ever gets a 0, in which case it won't matter. Oh man, and this is the problem with, unfortunately, these high lesson count decks. It's just slamming lessons into play only late. It's kind of all we're seeing. He needs to see a little bit more action still on making sure he can't hold on to anything. But if Sammy had anything to play, he'd be playing it. You know, there's nothing to hold on to at any point now. I'd be surprised if we even bothered triggering or discard on him. Nope, looks like we're just going to play another Care Magical Creatures lesson, and we're going to play a Gargoyle. Oh, excuse me. And we're discarding 2 cards again to get that card, or one of the cards out of his hand. Passing the turn. And yeah, I think this is going to be a quick round 1 here for Stefan. Both of these players very familiar with each other. Get to play games against each other for fun. Plenty. I'm sure they're having a field day jamming games right now. These guys go pretty quick because they know the cards, they know each other, they know what's up. Oh, we're showing Hawk's Head. Yeah, man, he's basically like, if you had gotten this other Hawk's Head formation, I'd be in some big trouble. But thankfully, he was able to snatch it with the Pixie. You know, think about that. Just that. You know, one more of those, one more burn spell like that puts him that much closer. Basically, he's 2 spells away from losing. But, you know, we've got 6, 7, 8 damage showing here on the board. So I think really they're just talking it out because this is Sammy's last turn to try and do something. Stefan saying, yeah, look, it's a big deal that I took this Hawk's Head formation. It's keeping me in this, you know, the fact that you did draw 2 more of these, or get to play 2 more of these. I need to see more Peeves, guys. Although Seamus is in here, I love that. I think that's going to be the end of this game, guys. I know they're hanging for a second here, but let me just pop in the Discord to see if we've got results from the other rounds. No, just the report for this round. All right, so let's go ahead and see what we have got at our other table. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say? Oh no, I didn't say untap.io. I was gonna say I might have said .to because it's tabletop. No, it's yeah, untap.in. In. Hoods has got it there. All right, we'll go ahead and change these player names. These are not who's playing right now. Looks like this is what's going on at table 2. Oh boy, there are a lot of lessons on the table. Pat up top is the one who took it last week, and he is playing against Woman. There we go. That's alright, I'm a mumbler. It's wide R, so I don't blame you. It's all good. Alright. Now we got a lot going on here. What are we up to? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lessons at the bottom. With potions in the deck, that's the magic number if we were going for some VTJs. And Pat's got enough cards in his hand that VTJ would be pretty devastating. Interesting that we're bothering to play Transfiguration lessons when McGonagall is our starter. Typically, if you're going to start with McGonagall, since she provides you Transfiguration and you only ever need one matching lesson to cast a spell, you would just fill your deck with Quidditch and Potions lessons for consistency, and you would skip the Transfiguration lessons. Although I might be getting a little ahead of myself, there is a card in Revival that turns off the abilities of your starting character, so it would disable McGonagall's ability to provide Transfiguration lessons. And in that case, if I was playing McGonagall as my starter, I would have some in my sideboard. And that might be exactly what happened here. Since this isn't the first game, we might have sideboarded those back in. Harry Potter, oh my goodness. Who's got Harry Potter? Is this guy in play? Is this our starting character? It has to be McGonagall, has to be our starter, right? Oh, now I'm curious. So, remember how we said earlier that using an action to draw a card is one of our least favorite things to do. The poor Harry Potter starters, all the Harry Potter cards got a real short end of the stick in the Harry Potter trading card game, which is weird, right? You would think that they would have made Harry really, really strong, but they didn't. So this Harry Potter card, it's whenever you use an action to draw a card, you may draw 2 cards instead of 1. But using an action to draw a card is pretty loose, so I certainly don't want to invest my starting character or even a character I'm playing onto the field into that ability. I'd rather have something that gives me a little more bang for my buck. Both of these guys filling up their hands like crazy. and man, with the potions in play, if we don't have Venomous in our deck, I mean, you know, we've got hair care potions in here, which I like. It's letting us play characters for 1 action less. And we are playing Platform 93 Quarters. That's a great card. It's a very strong card that gives you extra actions. So there's a lot of stuff I really like about what we're doing here. Looks like we're using Drought of Living Death. Probably one of our main win con damaging spells here. We're going to discard 2 of our Potions Lessons to do 12 damage to our opponent. And then Spiral Dive is we're going to discard our hand and finish him off. So it looks like Spiral Dive and Drought of Living Death is going to be the combo here. Drought of Living Death for 1 action is going to do 12 damage to our opponent. He's got 18 cards left in deck. And Spiral Dive is going to do the rest. It's going to go ahead and discard these cards from our hand, which is about 15 or 16 cards. And yeah, it's more than enough there. I think that's the old GG, and these guys are probably reporting. I know it says it's slowing down, this because these guys are both quitting the game. And so that's probably round 1. Unless we're going to another game. No, it looks like that's game 3. Because it says now they're going to game 4. Oh, and it looks like Harry Potter is our starting character there. So that's very interesting to me that we chose to start Harry. But playing a character deck otherwise is very, very good. So the fact that we're taking advantage of some of those character things and that action advantage is going to be enough to get us past a lot of other players here, I think. Oh no, this might still be tournament here. These guys might be shuffling up for game 3. In fact, they are. So let me go ahead and get the game back up. I'm just going to tell them. Let's see. We got 18 minutes. They're fine. They'll be fine. Okay. Make me a believer in Harry. Draco the Seeker here is if your opponent has any cards, you may use an action to make them choose one and discard it. So Draco is usually a pretty good utility piece in other decks, although he's a decent starter. But what's funny is, and it's kind of designed this way, you'd imagine, right, is that Draco is actually pretty ineffective if Harry is going to be filling our hand with cards. And we saw last game that we had just so many cards in our hand, it makes Draco much less effective. Draco is going to go ahead and just open up with a Diagon Alley Adventure. Remember, adventures require 2 actions, so that's his entire turn. But Diagon Alley's effect is that your opponent can't use actions to draw cards. Which is funny, because that kind of directly counters Harry Potter here. Harry, if he had said that he, uses an action and do something different, it'd be different. But no, we can't use actions to draw cards. To solve, your opponent has to skip 7 actions, and the reward is that they can draw any number of cards. So they're trying to make you skip 7 actions to deal with this. However, we're playing a character deck, which means we've got answers for damn near everything. So we go ahead and we get our potion into Lockhart's Hair Care, and on turn after that, turn 2, we'll play Argus Filch for only 1 action thanks to Hair Care potions. Let's just play character cards for 1 action instead of 2. Then we will use an action to use Filch's ability, which just discards that adventure from play. So goodbye Diagon Alley, and goodbye the protection that Pat was trying to hide behind early here. Definitely siding that in to try and slow Harry down, to slow down some of that stuff. Or maybe it wasn't sided. Maybe he has it just because of the synergy with Draco's discard. But not going to be nearly as effective as we'd like it to be when Filch is not just going to get rid of that adventure, but unlike McGonagall, he is not just a one and done. He can sit here and just, perpetually delete adventures for one action whenever we want. There are a couple adventures that specify that your opponent can't use actions to do things except certain abilities. And that does mess with Filch a little bit because he does kind of using an action to use an ability. But for a lot of the adventures, like Pep Talk, Diagon Alley, Hagrid Needs Help, Argus Filch can get you right out of that. Excited to watch this TCG. Yeah, sorry, I'm reading this a little late. But yeah, it's, Harry Potter. Everybody, who doesn't like Harry Potter? Who doesn't want to know what's going on in the Harry Potter TCG world, even if it's 20 years dead, right? Looks like we're going to go ahead and just play another Diagon Alley, which is interesting because it's going to cost us 2 actions, and our opponent's going to undo it just for 1. But maybe we have a plan. Nope, it looks like that was our turn, and on Lostrian's turn, we're going to use an action to remove the Diagon Alley with Filch. Then we're going to play Professor McGonagall. McGonagall, of course, is one of the best starting witches of the game. But if you're not starting her and your opponent's not starting her, hey, she's a hell of a good additional character as well. She provides a lesson as well as the ability to get rid of an adventure for no actions. However, she can only do that once a game. So you'll normally see McGonagall get tapped sideways when they've used that ability. So we have a little bit of redundancy on those adventures. So as if the first Diagon Alley wasn't bad enough for us, as if the second one wasn't a bad enough idea, we've got the old, hey, really, though, stop trying to lock me with these adventures. You're going to have to try a different strategy here. And it looks like we are going to... I don't know why he discarded cards. Oh, he Pasha's turn was 2 Dracos, it looks like. Okay. Yeah, so they guys aren't passing the turn back and forth. Sorry, so it gets a little tough for me to tell whose turn it is. So what's happened here is Pat's, for 2 turns in a row, used both of his actions just to take cards out of Wamin's hand. And Wamin is like, yeah, I'm just going to use my 2 actions to draw 4 cards, basically undoing 2 of your turns. So you don't want to do this, man. Draco's going to lose this battle. I mean, I guess if both of these guys just sat here and did it for the rest of the game, Harry would deck first. But Harry is a little bit more established, even though this isn't very set up. The fact that he's playing hair care potions means, Grip Hook could very easily be a card here. Spiral Dive is a card we know is here. So he's doing some big character combo stuff here. What else we got, man? This is the back and forth of like, show me your hand, get rid of those 2 cards, and then draw 4 in response is getting old quick. We can start to discern kind of what Pat's scared of by looking at what he's pulling out of the hand. He's basically just pulling lessons out of the hand, I guess, trying to stop Wamin from getting to some of those bigger payoffs. Cards like Elixir of Life, yeah, those aren't getting played. Since a lot of his big damage cards are like expensive and require discarding lessons, ditching a lot of those lessons is not a bad idea. Looks like we are going to play a fouled on our opponent here. Oh man, this is a lot of adventures. A lot of adventures in this deck. Escaping the Dursleys, Letters from No One, and Grip Hook as well in Pat's deck. Grip Hook is very interesting in a Draco deck because they're kind of the opposite, right? Draco is sitting here all game taking cards out of their hand. And then Grip Hook is like, hey, if they have a bunch of cards in their hand, I do a lot of extra damage. You can look at it as like, oh, if they're really, really good at getting rid of my stuff, I can, you know, play this Grip Hook. So if they're super countering Draco, then I can just counter that. But it's a little too deep for me. Oh, look at this. We've revealed the hand to me. That's very kind. And it looks like we're just jamming cards into play. Oh, we got rid of all the lessons in our hand because we played Aparecium. So he showed his hand to the opponent and put all lesson cards in his hand into play. So he just slammed all that down. Then he's going to platform 9 3/4 to get rid of one lesson and get the get 2 actions. Then Flying Lapse is going to let him draw a card for each number of lessons he has to play and deal that much damage to the opponent. And this is pretty cool. Now, oh, Deboning, one of the strongest Transfiguration cards in the game for sure. Says during your opponent's next turn, they can't use actions to play cards. Very powerful. So we've put a bunch of cards in our hand, did a bunch of damage to our opponent based on our lessons. So we can start to see the payoff for this deck is we want to use Flying Lapse after we get a ton of lessons into play to refill our hand, deal a bunch of damage to our opponent, and then we want to use Spiral Dive to take all those cards in our hand and deal that much damage again. I mean, Flying Lapse into a Spiral Dive is pretty terrifying. We have more Flying Lapse here in our hand, but we have to start looking at how many cards are in our deck, how many lessons are in play, and thinking about exactly how many turns that gives us. Because we can check our discard pile, and we can see if Flying Lapse is in our discard, or sorry, not Flying Lapse, if all of our copies of Spiral Dive are in the discard pile. If we know that there's enough copies of Spiral Dive left in the deck, then you definitely just play Flying Lapse. It looks like that's what we did, so we played Flying Lapse. Now we're playing 2 platform 9 3/4. It's going to be discarding 2 lessons. We're going to be up to 3 actions. Probably going to Fouled, Drought of Living Death, and Deboning if I had to guess. Not in that order though. Drought of Living Death's going to be the last one you should do, so you have enough lessons for it. Although I guess he's got 9, so when he gets rid of 2, he'll still be fine for deboning. But yeah, Drought of Living Death is going to be a straight 12 to the face. Fouled will be another 4 to the face, so that'd be 16. Then we deboning and pass, and then the best we have Flying Lapse is another 7. 23, so yeah, Flying Lapse, and then we just need any of those Spiral Dives, man, although it looks like we didn't draw any here. Spiral Dive, Grip Hook even. We see his one of Dobby's Disappearance. This is one of those cards that was restricted on the ban list to 1 copy, so players can only have 1 Dobby's Disappearance in their deck. Very powerful card. Removes one of their permanents and gives you your action back, effectively letting players take, you know, like 4, 5, 6 action turns if they have enough Dobbies. Not anymore. There he is. There's Peeves. Oh my goodness, we've been talking about this guy, waiting for him all day. Glad to see him. There he is. Look at that smile. Peeves is a once per game. You may discard your hand and draw 7, and then your opponent discards their hand and draws 7. And we're going to use Peeves to win right now. Unless we're showing our opponent Peeves because we're getting hit. But if we neglected to deboning him here... Oh no, we did. We got to the Spiral Dive. I don't know why I didn't see Spiral Dive. We Drought of Living Death and Spiral Dive, and I guess he's just showing him I had Peeves for next turn if you missed the kill. But I feel like that's irrelevant because he would have deboninged. But it is still like, oh wow, it was closer than it looked. This here, Peeves, is kind of the punishment for how fast Wamin was going through his cards. The fact that he put himself in that kill range for Peeves, but again, he didn't put himself in that range without being completely prepared to deal lethal damage. So that's a really, really cool looking deck. We're going to get to see some more of that in the coming rounds. For now, let's go ahead and get round 2 paired. Pretty cool. So while we wait for them to put that final report in there, that means the 4 decks that we have tonight are a Draco the Seeker, Draco Creature Adventure Control. I assume there's creatures in the deck because I saw Care of Magical Creatures Lessons. We've got a Harry Potter, believe it or not, Harry Potter character Spiral Dive deck. It almost feels bad calling it just a Spiral Dive deck, but this is like a it's like a lesson ramp Spiral Dive, Flying Lapse, and Dread of Living Death, just like combo kill deck here. Hannah, what a great card. I love seeing this card here. Players just kind of talking out their lines. It's cool to see. Alright, looks like these guys have got their up. And then the other 2 decks, of course, are Stefan is playing the Gilderoy Lockhart hand discard deck, hand control deck. And we saw Sammy playing a Madam Hooch Charms Quidditch deck. I'm surprised. I thought I was going to see Sammy rocking plants his first time, but maybe he's got the plants in reserve for later, for future weeks. All right, let's go ahead and get round 2 paired for the people here. All right, we've got the pairings up for the next round. The players are splitting off into their tables. And at table 1, we're going to have Stefan with the Gilderoy Lockhart hand control deck versus Waman Bai. I think that's the deck we're going to put on because it'll be interesting to see if the Harry Potter is strong enough to get himself out of both of these discard style decks. The Draco, more of an old school discard deck, and the Gilderoy kind of showing the power that discard can have in the new revival format. Gilderoy Lockhart also often gets talked about getting paired with Draco. I think it's interesting that we don't have either of them in the same deck together here, but we're going to get to see how Gilderoy kind of stacks up against something that gave the Draco deck a lot of trouble. Okay.